My daughter looked me in the eye and said, "There's no space at this table for me. My name is Marcus Delacroix and I've been a chef for 40 years. It was Christmas night. Food Network cameras were rolling. Celebrity judges were tasting recipes from my late wife's collection. Recipes my daughter was presenting as her own creations. When they asked about me, she told them I was the prep cook. Basic maintenance work, memory issues. Then came the moment that changed everything. There's no space at the table for you tonight, Marcus. But what she didn't know, I owned everything. Before we continue, first let me thank you for watching this story. Please subscribe and tell us where you're watching from in the comments. We might give you a shout out in our next video. Today's special shout out goes to Mariah from New York. Thank you for being part of our family. Now let me tell everything. The $4 million restaurant, every supplier contract, every business license, all in my name. And I had 40 years of documentation to prove it. So, I pulled out an envelope that would end her career in front of 8 cameras. If you're watching this, hit subscribe. I'd love to know where you're from. Ever been betrayed by someone you built up? This is how 40 years of building something ended with one signature. Let me take you back to December 23rd, 6 p.m. Isabel's flagship restaurant, Delacroix's, was buzzing with a $180,000 Food Network camera setup Christmas special, her biggest break yet. I'd been working in that kitchen since 6 a.m. prepping for what Isabel called her moment. Same hands that taught her to hold a knife. Same recipes I perfected after my wife Juliana died 8 years ago. The camera crew arrived at 5:30. I watched Isabel transform into someone I didn't recognize. Designer chef coat, $400. I bought it for her last Christmas. Hair and makeup team. Another $800 out of my pocket, though she'd never admit it. Marcus, you need to stay in the back tonight, she told me, not even looking up from her phone. This is about showcasing my vision. Her vision. The ossobuco recipe. She just got nominated for a James Beard Award. That's Juliana's Christmas recipe from 1943. The handwritten card is sitting in my kitchen drawer right now, yellowed with age, written in my late wife's Italian cursive. But I said nothing, just like I had for 8 years. The Food Network producer, a young guy named Trevor, started filming B-roll footage. He pointed his camera at me. "And who's this?" Trevor asked Isabel. "Oh, that's Marcus," Isabel said, waving her hand dismissively. "He's our prep cook. Does the basic chopping and cleaning. Prep cook. 40 years of professional cooking. 26 years of supplier relationships. A business I built from nothing after Juliana passed. Reduced to prep cook on national television." Trevor kept filming. "How long have you worked here, Marcus?" Isabel jumped in before I could answer. "He's been helping out for a few years. Really reliable with the simple tasks." Simple tasks. I thought about the Russo Foods contract sitting in my office file cabinet. $900,000 annual exclusively under my name. Vincent Russo won't sell to anyone else. We've done business since 1998. The day I opened my first restaurant, I thought about the Ferrara Imports relationship. $380,000 in specialty ingredients, all flowing through contracts I personally negotiated in Italian because that's where I came from and respect matters in business. But Isabel didn't want the cameras to know any of that. "Marcus, we need more basil prepped for the appetizer station," she called out loud enough for the crew to hear. "Make sure you wash your hands first." The food critic from Boston Magazine was there, too. Elena Rodriguez, she discovered our family 5 years ago, wrote the article that launched Isabel's career. The rising star of Boston's North End, the headline read, "Not a single mention of whose recipes made that star possible." Elena caught my eye and nodded slightly. She remembered. She'd interviewed me for 3 hours that day, tasted every dish. Asked about my wife's heritage, but Isabel's publicist had edited me out of the final story. As the crew set up for dinner service, I retreated to my small office behind the kitchen. 20 years of documentation lined those walls, green binders full of supplier invoices, bank statements showing $890,000 in business accounts under my name, insurance policies listing me as primary beneficiary on a $4.2 million operation. But most importantly, I had Juliana's recipe collection. 127 family dishes handwritten between 1943 and 2016, the foundation of everything Isabel called her innovative cuisine. I pulled out the envelope I'd been carrying for 3 months. Inside were copies of documents Isabel had never seen. Documents that would prove who really built this empire. The question wasn't whether I had the power to change everything. The question was whether 40 years of staying quiet had finally reached its end. If I stayed silent that night, I knew exactly what would happen. I'd watched it building for 8 years. Isabel was about to sign an $850,000 cookbook deal with Random House. Isabel's Italian-American Kitchen, Recipes from the Heart. Every recipe in that book came from Juliana's handwritten cards, my late wife's legacy, packaged and sold under our daughter's name. The Food Network contract was worth another $300,000 for a 6-episode series. Isabel's Sunday Table. I'd already seen the treatment. Isabel cooking her family recipes in her restaurant, telling stories about her culinary journey. No mention of the 40-year foundation that made it all possible. But the financial theft was just the beginning. 3 weeks earlier, Isabel had fired Benjamin Cole, my head sommelier. 15 years of loyalty gone overnight. His crime. He'd mentioned to a wine distributor that Marcus Delacroix was the real owner of the restaurant. Isabel called it confusion about the chain of command. Benjamin came to me that night holding his termination papers. "Marcus, she's rewriting history." He said, "Next week's staff meeting, she's announcing new policies. No one talks about the old days with customers. No one mentions your name during service. She wants to erase you completely." That's when I realized this wasn't just about credit anymore. This was about legacy erasure. Juliana's recipes weren't just dishes to me. They were love letters. Every Sunday for 12 years, my wife would spend hours perfecting one recipe, writing notes in the margins. More garlic for Marcus's taste. Less salt. Remember Papa's heart condition. This one makes Marcus smile. And after she died, I poured my grief into those recipes. I spent 2 years getting each dish exactly right, the way Juliana intended, the ossobuco that Isabel got nominated for. I made that dish 400 times, adjusting the braising liquid until it matched Juliana's final notes. Isabel knew this. She was there, 25 years old, watching me cry over a pot of tomato sauce because it reminded me of her mother. She held my hand while I taught her every technique, every family secret. Now she was selling those memories to the highest bidder. The legal implications were even worse than the emotional ones. I'd been financing Isabel's lifestyle for 8 years through what our accountant called family business expenses. $2,100 monthly to her personal account, $47,000 for her Range Rover down payment, $18,000 for her Culinary Institute externship in Italy. Total $180,000 in direct support since Juliana's death. All documented, all classified as business investments in Isabel's professional development. All perfectly legal as long as she remained part of the family business operation. But if Isabel continued distancing herself from the family foundation, those payments became personal gifts, taxable gifts. The IRS was very specific about family business relationships versus personal support. Isabel had no idea she owed $320,000 in back taxes on what she'd been treating as free money. Then there was the supplier situation. Vincent Russo had called me twice that week. "Marcus, I'm getting strange requests from your daughter." He said she wants to renegotiate our contract under her name. Wants all future deliveries addressed to Isabel Delacroix, not Marcus Delacroix. I told her I only do business with you. 26 years, your word is gold. But she's pushing hard. And if Isabel succeeded in transferring those supplier relationships, she'd own the operational foundation of the business. I'd become financially dependent on her goodwill. At 62, with no other income, that meant poverty. But the worst part was watching Isabel erase Juliana's memory in real time. Last month, a food blogger asked Isabel about her inspiration for the Christmas menu. Isabel talked about finding her authentic voice and breaking free from traditional constraints. She never mentioned Juliana once. Juliana, who spent every December testing holiday recipes. Juliana, who wrote detailed notes about which spices worked best in winter dishes. Juliana, who made me promise to keep her recipes alive after she was gone. Don't let them forget where this came from, Marcus, she said 3 days before the cancer took her. Promise me our story stays true. I'd been failing that promise for 8 years. If I stayed quiet that night, Isabel would complete her transformation into a self-made success story. The cookbook would cement her version of history. The Food Network show would reach millions with a narrative that erased both Juliana's contribution and my 40 years of work. But more than that, I'd be abandoning my responsibility as Juliana's husband and Isabel's father. Sometimes love requires boundaries. Sometimes protecting what matters means risking everything you've built. That envelope in my pocket contained 40 years of documentation, bank records, supplier contracts, business licenses, insurance policies, proof of who really owned what. The only question left was whether I had the courage to use it. At 7:15, the real filming began. Isabel gathered the Food Network crew in the main dining room. 12 place settings, all perfectly arranged. 11 for the cameras and guests. None for me. I watched from the kitchen pass-through as Trevor set up the interview. So, Isabel, tell us about tonight's menu, Trevor said, his camera rolling. These are your signature holiday dishes. Absolutely, Isabel replied, her voice smooth and confident. Everything tonight represents my culinary evolution, my take on traditional Italian-American cuisine, but elevated for modern palates. Her take. I felt something twist in my chest, but I stayed silent. And the ossobuco that earned your James Beard nomination? Isabel smiled for the camera. That dish is very personal to me. It represents my connection to authentic Italian flavors, but with my own innovative touches. The braising technique I developed really makes the difference. Her braising technique, the one I taught her letter by letter from Juliana's handwritten notes. Trevor continued, I understand this restaurant has deep family roots. Well, yes and no, Isabel said carefully. I certainly draw inspiration from family traditions, but this restaurant is really about my vision for contemporary Italian-American dining. I've worked incredibly hard to build something unique here. Something unique built on 40 years of my supplier relationships, my business licenses, my financial investment. Then Trevor asked the question that changed everything. Who else is involved in the restaurant operations? Isabel hesitated for just a moment. I have a fantastic team. My sous chef, my pastry chef, some really reliable support staff. Support staff. Trevor's cameraman had been filming me through the pass-through. Now Trevor walked toward the kitchen. And this gentleman, he seems very focused on his work. Isabel's voice got sharper. That's Marcus. He handles prep work and basic kitchen maintenance. Been with us for a while. Basic kitchen maintenance. Trevor approached me directly. Marcus, how do you enjoy working with Isabel? I looked at my daughter. 40 years of teaching her everything I knew. 8 years of funding her dreams. 26 years of building the supplier relationships that kept her restaurants running. I enjoy supporting the family business, I said carefully. Isabel stepped between Trevor and me. Marcus, we need you to focus on prep right now. The appetizer course goes out in 20 minutes. She was dismissing me on camera in the business I built. Of course, I said quietly. Whatever you need. But as I turned back toward the prep station, Trevor kept filming. Marcus, have you been cooking professionally for long? Isabel's jaw tightened. Trevor, maybe we should focus on tonight's menu instead. Marcus is more comfortable with kitchen work than interviews. More comfortable? Like I was some shy employee instead of the man who taught her how to braise vegetables. Actually, I said, meeting Trevor's camera. I've been cooking for 40 years. Started my first restaurant in 1998. Isabel's face went pale. Marcus, we really need those appetizers. Your restaurant? Trevor asked, his interest clearly piqued. This restaurant? I said simply. I opened Delacroix's in March of 1998. The kitchen went completely silent. Even the dishwashers stopped working. Isabel forced a laugh. Marcus likes to joke sometimes. Language barrier. You know what he means is he's been working in restaurants for 40 years. He's been very helpful here. Language barrier. I'd been speaking perfect English since I arrived in America in 1978, longer than Isabel had been alive. Trevor looked confused. So, you're not the owner? Isabel stepped forward quickly. I'm the owner and executive chef. Marcus is part of our kitchen team. Very valuable, but he sometimes gets confused about the business structure. Confused? The envelope in my pocket felt heavier. I'm not confused, I said quietly. Would you like to see the business license? Isabel's voice got sharp and fast. Marcus, please. You're embarrassing yourself, Trevor. I apologize. Sometimes our older staff members get a little mixed up about their roles. Older staff members. Trevor looked between Isabel and me, clearly sensing tension but not understanding it. Maybe we should continue the interview in the dining room, Isabel said, her hand on Trevor's arm. Marcus, please finish the antipasto prep and try to keep the noise down back here during filming. Keep the noise down in the kitchen I'd designed using equipment I'd purchased, following recipes I'd perfected for 8 years. As Isabel led Trevor away, I heard her voice carrying from the dining room. I'm sorry about that. Marcus's been struggling a bit lately. Memory issues. You know, we keep him on because we care about our people, but he gets confused about his position here. Memory issues. I looked around the kitchen that had been my life for 26 years. The copper pasta pots Juliana and I had bought for our first anniversary. The knife set I'd given Isabel for culinary school graduation. The recipe cards in my handwriting taped above every station. My position here. I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to Benjamin Cole. Can you come to the restaurant tonight? Bring the green binder from my office. Then I sent another text to Vincent Russo. Are you available for a phone call? It's about the contracts. Isabel wanted to treat me like confused kitchen help. She was about to learn exactly who owned what, but I wasn't going to embarrass her on camera. Not yet. I was going to let her finish digging her own grave first. While Isabel continued her interview, I retreated to my small office behind the kitchen. The walls told the real story of Delacroix's restaurant. Green binders lined the shelves, each containing years of documentation. I pulled out the one-labeled supplier contracts 2019 to 2024. The Russo Foods agreement sat on top. $900,000 annual renewable every 3 years. Signed March 15, 2021. Marcus Delacroix, primary account holder. Isabel Delacroix, authorized representative. Authorized representative, not owner, not decision maker. Representative. Vincent Russo had been clear when we structured this contract. Marcus, I do business with you. Your reputation, your word. If anything happens to you, we renegotiate. But as long as you're alive and operational, this contract stays in your name. I flipped through the other agreements. Castellano Seafood $540,000 annually. Ferrara Imports $380,000. Rossi Wine Distributors $220,000. Every major supplier, every critical relationship all flowing through contracts bearing my signature. Total annual purchasing power $2.08 million. Without these suppliers, Isabel's restaurants couldn't operate for a week. My phone buzzed. Text from Vincent Russo. Marcus, good to hear from you. What's going on with the contract situation? Isabel called earlier wanting to discuss transitioning primary account status. I told her I need to talk with you first. I typed back, can you call me in 10 minutes? It's important. Another text arrived from Benjamin Cole. On my way. Should I bring the business license folder, too? Yes, I replied, especially the original from 1998. I opened the desk drawer and pulled out the documents I'd been carrying for 3 months. Copies of everything Isabel had never seen, never asked about, never bothered to understand. The original business license from Boston City Hall, dated March 15, 1998. Marcus Delacroix, sole proprietor. The business had been restructured twice since then, but I remained the primary license holder. The property lease for 487 Hanover Street. Marcus Delacroix, lessee. $18,000 monthly automatically renewed through December 2026. Isabel's name appeared nowhere on the lease agreement. The commercial insurance policy $2.4 million in coverage, $47,000 annual premium. Marcus Delacroix, primary insured and beneficiary. Isabel listed as key employee, not owner. Most importantly, the banking documents. Marcus Delacroix, primary account holder on all business accounts. Current balance $893,412. Isabel had signing authority, but only for transactions under $5,000. Everything above that required my authorization. For 8 years, Isabel had been operating under the assumption that gradual authority meant ownership. She signed vendor checks, approved staff schedules, made menu decisions. I'd given her increasing responsibility because I wanted her to feel invested in the business, but legal ownership had never transferred. My phone rang. Vincent Rousseau. Marcus, what's this about Isabel wanting to change the contracts? She's trying to remove me from the business relationship, I said quietly. Claims the old contracts are inefficient. Vincent laughed. Inefficient? Marcus, we've done $2.6 million in business over 5 years. No payment delays, no quality issues, no contract disputes. That's the most efficient relationship I have. What did you tell her? I told her I don't renegotiate with employees. If she wants to discuss supplier relationships, you and I need to have that conversation. Owner to owner. Owner to owner. Vincent understood the business structure, even if Isabel had forgotten it. Vincent, if I decided to make changes to our supplier arrangements, how much notice would you need? For what kind of changes? Complete restructuring. Different restaurant, different management, different authorized representatives. Vincent was quiet for a moment. Marcus, are you closing Delacroix's? Not closing. Changing ownership structure. How much notice legally? 30 days. But Marcus, we're talking about Christmas week. I've got $7,000 in specialty items ordered for your holiday menu. Isabel already approved the delivery for tomorrow morning. I made a note. $7,000 in specialty ingredients delivered under contracts bearing my signature for a holiday menu Isabel was presenting as her own creation. Don't worry about the holiday delivery, I said. But after January 1st, things might look different. After I hung up, I sat staring at the documents spread across my desk. 40 years of careful, methodical business building. Every contract properly structured, every relationship honestly maintained, every legal requirement meticulously followed. Isabel thought she was the star of tonight's show. She had no idea she was about to become a guest in her own restaurant. At 8:30, the dinner service began. Trevor and his camera crew filmed every course with Isabel narrating her culinary philosophy between each dish. The antipasto course went out first. Burrata with honey truffle oil, prosciutto di Parma, and roasted peppers. I'd been making this exact combination since 1999. This represents my approach to Italian-American cuisine, Isabel told the camera. Taking traditional elements, but elevating them with modern techniques and premium ingredients. Premium ingredients sourced through my contracts with Ferrara Imports. Techniques I taught her step by step. The second course was worse. Handmade pappardelle with wild boar ragu. This pasta recipe took me 3 years to perfect, Isabel said, twirling the noodles for the camera, getting the texture exactly right, balancing the richness of the ragu with the lightness of the pasta. 3 years to perfect. I looked down at Juliana's recipe card dated December 1994. Her handwriting, Marcus's favorite, make extra for Sunday dinners. But the James Beard-nominated ossobuco was what finally broke my silence. Isabel presented the dish like a masterpiece, explaining her innovative braising technique and unique spice blend to Trevor and the 3 celebrity guest judges. This dish represents everything I am as a chef, she said. It's my interpretation of traditional Italian comfort food, but with my own signature touches that make it contemporary. Her interpretation. Her signature touches. I watched from the kitchen as Isabel cut into the meat, the fork tender after 6 hours of braising in Juliana's exact recipe. The sauce glistening with the specific combination of herbs Juliana had perfected over 12 years of Sunday dinners. The depth of flavor here is extraordinary, said Judge Caroline Harper from James Beard Foundation. How did you develop this particular spice combination? Isabel smiled confidently. It came from years of experimentation. I wanted to honor traditional flavors while creating something uniquely mine. The key is the timing. When you add each component matters enormously. The timing. Juliana's recipe card specified exactly when to add each spice down to the minute. Notes written in her careful Italian cursive refined through decades of family dinners. And the braising liquid? Asked Judge David Kim from Food and Wine magazine. That's my secret. Isabel laughed. Let's just say it took a lot of trial and error to get it right. Trial and error. I still had Juliana's original notes, including the crossed-out attempts and her final perfect proportions. Trevor turned his camera toward the kitchen. Marcus, you've been working on this dish all day. What do you think of Isabel's technique? Isabel's head snapped up. She started to speak, but Trevor was focused on me. It's a very old recipe, I said carefully. Very traditional technique. Marcus, Isabel said sharply. Focus on cleaning up the prep stations, please. But Trevor kept the camera rolling. Traditional how? Is this a family recipe? Isabel stepped between the camera and me again. Trevor, Marcus doesn't really understand the creative process. He just follows the prep list I give him. Just follows prep. Judge Caroline Harper looked curious. I'm sorry. What was your name again? Marcus Delacroix, I said clearly. Delacroix like the restaurant name? Isabel forced another laugh. Coincidence. Marcus's last name happened to match what I wanted to call the restaurant. Pure luck. Pure luck. Judge David Kim looked confused. Wait, Isabel. I thought this was a family restaurant. Your bio mentions family traditions. It is about family traditions, Isabel said quickly. My family's traditions. Marcus has been helpful with some of the basic preparations. Basic preparations like perfecting Juliana's recipe for 3 years after her death, like teaching Isabel every technique she'd use tonight. Actually, Judge Caroline said, Marcus, how long have you been cooking? 40 years, I said. I started my first restaurant in 1998. Isabel's face went red. Marcus, you're confused again. Please go check on the dessert station. But Caroline Harper was a professional food writer. She recognized something was wrong. I'm sorry, Isabel, but I'm confused now, too. Marcus says he started a restaurant in 1998. This restaurant opened in 1998. Are you telling me that's a coincidence? The entire dining room went quiet. 8 Food Network cameras captured every second. Isabel looked directly at me, her voice cold and deliberate. Marcus has some memory issues. He gets confused about his role here. He's been a kitchen worker for many years, but he sometimes imagines he's more important than he actually is. Memory issues. Imagines he's more important in front of 3 James Beard judges, in front of Food Network cameras, in front of the media critic who'd originally discovered our family. That's when Elena Rodriguez, the food writer from Boston Magazine, spoke up. Actually, Isabel, I interviewed Marcus extensively when I wrote about this restaurant in 2019. He was very clear about the restaurant's history and his family recipes. Isabel's smile became frozen. Elena, you know how these things work. Sometimes sources get confused about their contributions. Sources get confused. She was calling me a confused source in the business I built using recipes from my dead wife's collection. Trevor looked between Isabel and me, clearly sensing a story bigger than a simple cooking show. Marcus, Trevor said, can you tell us about your role in this restaurant? Isabel cut me off before I could answer. Trevor, I really think we should focus on the food tonight. Marcus isn't comfortable with interviews, and honestly, this is getting uncomfortable for everyone. Then she looked directly at me, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. Marcus, there's no space at this table for you tonight. This is about my achievements, my restaurant, my future. Maybe you should go home early. No space at this table. 8 Food Network cameras recorded those words. 3 James Beard judges heard them. Elena Rodriguez, who knew our real story, sat in stunned silence. My own daughter telling me to leave the restaurant I built on camera in front of the industry that had respected my work for 40 years. That's when I reached into my pocket and pulled out the envelope. Actually, Isabel, I said quietly, I think there might be some confusion about whose table this is. The silence in that dining room was absolute. 8 cameras rolling, capturing every face, every breath. Trevor lowered his handheld camera, but kept it recording. Professional instincts told him something major was happening. "I'm sorry, Marcus." "What did you say?" Judge Caroline Harper asked. Isabel's voice was sharp with warning. "Marcus, please don't embarrass yourself further." I opened the envelope slowly, deliberately. 40 years of documentation, every piece legally notarized, properly filed, meticulously maintained. I said there might be confusion about whose table this is. I repeated, my voice calm and clear. "Because this is my restaurant." Isabel laughed, but it sounded forced. "Trevor, I'm so sorry about this. Marcus has been having some difficulties lately. Delusions about ownership. We've been trying to help him, but this is the original business license," I said, pulling out the first document. Marcus Delacroix, sole proprietor, filed March 15, 1998 with Boston City Hall. I placed it on the table where everyone could see it. Trevor's camera zoomed in on the document. The official seal was clearly visible. "This is the current business license," I continued, producing a second paper. Updated 3 times, most recently in 2022. Marcus Delacroix, primary license holder. Isabel's face had gone white. Those are old documents. The business structure has changed." "You're right," I said. "It has changed. Would you like to see the LLC filing from 2020? I placed the next document on the table. Delacroix Restaurant Group LLC. Marcus Delacroix, managing member and majority owner. Isabel Delacroix, employee and authorized representative. Judge David Kim leaned forward to read the document. "This says Isabel Delacroix is listed as an employee, not an owner." "That's correct," I said. "She has signing authority for daily operations under $5,000. Anything above that requires my approval." Trevor kept filming as I pulled out more documents. "This is the property lease. 487 Hanover Street. Marcus Delacroix, primary lessee. $18,000 monthly rent automatically renewed through December 2026. Isabel found her voice. "Marcus, stop. You're humiliating both of us. This is the commercial insurance policy. $2.4 million in coverage. Marcus Delacroix, primary insured and beneficiary, $47,000 annual premium paid from business account number ending in 4157. I looked at Isabel directly. "The account you have signing authority on but don't own." Elena Rodriguez was taking notes rapidly. Judge Caroline Harper had her phone out, clearly photographing the documents. "These are the supplier contracts," I continued, placing 4 thick folders on the table. Russo Foods $900,000 annually. Castellano Seafood $540,000. Ferrara Imports $380,000. Rossi Wine Distributors $220,000. Trevor's camera captured each folder as I opened them. Every contract bears my signature as primary account holder. Isabel is listed as authorized representative only. Without my approval, these suppliers won't deliver a single ingredient. The room was dead silent except for the soft whir of camera equipment. "And these," I said, pulling out Juliana's recipe collection, "are the recipes Isabel has been calling her own creations." I opened to the ossobuco recipe card. Juliana's handwriting was clearly visible, dated December 1994. "This is my late wife's original recipe for Christmas ossobuco, written in her hand 30 years ago. The recipe Isabel just got nominated for a James Beard Award." Judge Caroline Harper stood up to examine the recipe card more closely. "This is definitely decades old. The paper, the ink, the handwriting style. There are 127 recipes in this collection," I continued. "All written by Juliana Delacroix between 1943 and 2016. Every dish Isabel serves in this restaurant came from these cards." Isabel's voice was barely a whisper. "Marcus, please stop. This is the bank statement from our primary business account," I said, placing the final document on the table. "Marcus Delacroix, primary account holder. Current balance $893,412. Trevor moved his camera to capture the bank statement. The numbers were clearly visible. Isabel has been taking a salary of $4,800 monthly from this account. She also receives what she calls business expenses. Another $2,100 monthly for her personal account. Car payment, apartment rent, health insurance, all paid from business funds. I looked around the table at 8 stunned faces. Total compensation, $82,800 annually, plus benefits for an employee position in a restaurant she doesn't own, using recipes she didn't create, with suppliers she doesn't control. Judge David Kim was photographing documents with his phone. This is extraordinary. Isabel, were you not aware of these ownership structures? Isabel's mouth opened and closed, but no words came out. Trevor stepped closer with his camera. Marcus, why are you sharing this information now? Because 40 years of building something means it should survive honestly, I said. My wife, Juliana, died 8 years ago. I promised her I'd keep her recipes alive, keep her memory honored. I thought helping Isabel succeed was the right way to do that. I gestured toward the cameras. But having my contributions erased, my wife's legacy stolen, my own work dismissed as confused kitchen help, that's not honoring anything. Elena Rodriguez had stopped taking notes. She was staring at Isabel with something approaching disgust. Isabel, Caroline Harper said quietly. How do you explain this? Isabel looked around the room desperately. It's complicated. Marcus is technically the legal owner. Yes, but I've been running the creative and operational side for years. I've built the reputation, the brand, the customer base. Using whose recipes? I asked gently. Using family recipes, yes, but I've developed them, refined them, made them my own. Like the ossobuco that earned your James Beard nomination. Isabel's voice got smaller. I perfected that dish through years of testing. I opened Juliana's recipe folder to another card. This is Juliana's note from December 20th, 1994. She writes, Marcus loves this version best. Use less garlic, more rosemary. Perfect for Christmas dinner. I turned to another card. December 15th, 1995. Marcus says the sauce needs more wine. He's right. This is the final version. I looked at Isabel. Your mother spent 12 years perfecting that recipe. I spent 3 years after she died getting it exactly right according to her notes. You spent 0 years creating it. The Food Network cameras captured every word, every facial expression, every moment of realization. Trevor asked the question everyone was thinking. Isabel, what happens now? Isabel looked at me with something between desperation and anger. Marcus, we can work this out privately. We don't need to air family business on camera. You made it public business when you erased me from the story, I said calmly. When you called me confused kitchen help. When you told national television there was no space at this table for me. I gathered the documents back into the envelope. But you're right about one thing. We can work this out, just not the way you think. I pulled out one final document from the envelope, a single sheet of paper I'd been carrying for 3 months. This is a business relationship termination letter, I announced to the room, prepared by my attorney in September, just in case this day ever came. Isabel's eyes went wide. Marcus, what are you doing? Trevor kept his camera focused on me as I placed the document on the table where everyone could read it. Effective immediately, Isabel Delacroix's employment with Delacroix Restaurant Group LLC is terminated. Her authorized representative status with all suppliers is revoked. Her access to business accounts is suspended. Her signing authority is cancelled. Judge Caroline Harper read over my shoulder. This is a formal employment termination notice. It is, I confirmed, legally binding as soon as I sign it. Isabel stood up quickly. You can't do this, Marcus. You can't destroy everything we've built. I'm not destroying anything, I said calmly. I'm reclaiming what was always mine. I pulled out a pen from my jacket pocket, the same Mont Blanc pen Juliana had given me for our 20th anniversary, the one I'd used to sign every important document for the past 15 years. Marcus, please, Isabel said, her voice breaking. We can fix this. We can restructure the business properly. Give me credit for what I've contributed. I paused, pen hovering over the signature line. What have you contributed, Isabel? The question hung in the air. 8 cameras captured her struggle to answer. I've built the brand, the reputation, the customer base. Using whose recipes? Family recipes, but whose supplier relationships? Yours, but I've maintained them. Whose business license? Marcus, please. Whose money funded this restaurant for 8 years? Isabel's voice got desperate. You're my father. That's what fathers do. They support their children's dreams. I looked at her for a long moment. Yes, that's what fathers do. But what do daughters do? Do they honor that support? Do they acknowledge the foundation they're standing on? Do they respect the people who made their success possible? Trevor's camera captured the tear rolling down Isabel's cheek. Or do they erase their father's contributions and call him confused kitchen help on national television? I signed the document with slow, deliberate strokes. Marcus Delacroix, the signature that had built this empire, the signature that was now ending Isabel's role in it. Judge David Kim spoke softly. What happens to the restaurant now? I folded the termination letter and handed it to Isabel. The restaurant continues under proper management with honest attribution and with respect for the people who created it. Isabel stared at the paper in her hands. Marcus, I have nowhere else to go. This is my entire career. You're a trained chef, I said gently. You have skills. You can build something of your own honestly this time, but you can't build it here on my foundation using my wife's recipes while pretending I don't exist. Trevor stepped closer with his camera. Marcus, what's your plan for Delacroix's moving forward? I looked around the dining room, the space Juliana and I had designed together, the tables where we'd hosted hundreds of family celebrations, the kitchen where I taught Isabel everything she knew. I'm reopening as Juliana's Kitchen, I said, honoring my wife's memory properly, using her recipes with full attribution, employing people who understand the difference between collaboration and theft. Benjamin Cole appeared in the dining room doorway carrying the green binder I'd requested. He'd been waiting in the parking lot for my text. Benjamin, I called out. Would you like your job back? Benjamin looked at Isabel, then at me, then at the Food Network cameras capturing everything. Yes, sir, Mr. Delacroix. It would be an honor. Isabel's voice was barely audible. What about the Food Network contract? The cookbook deal? I turned to Trevor. The contracts are in Isabel's name, correct? Trevor nodded. Yes, with Isabel Delacroix and Delacroix's restaurant. Then they're null and void, I said simply. Isabel Delacroix no longer works for Delacroix's restaurant. And Delacroix's restaurant will be closing for restructuring in January. Judge Caroline Harper was still taking notes. This is unprecedented. I've never seen ownership revealed this way. Marcus, Isabel said, her voice hollow. I need to get my things from the office. Of course. Benjamin will escort you. Take your personal items. Everything else stays. Isabel looked around the room one more time. The restaurant she'd thought was hers. The success she'd believed she'd earned. The recognition that was about to evaporate. I'm sorry, she whispered. I nodded. I know you are, but sorry doesn't rebuild trust. Actions do. Trevor kept his camera rolling as Isabel walked toward the kitchen. 8 years of gradually increasing responsibility, ending with one signature on one piece of paper. Marcus, Trevor said, any final thoughts for our viewers? I looked directly into the camera. Respect the people who build your foundation. Credit the hands that teach you. Honor the recipes that feed your success. And remember, ownership isn't about who gets the spotlight. It's about who signed the papers. The Food Network Christmas special had just become something entirely different. Within 48 hours, the story had exploded across every food industry publication in America. Trevor's producer called me personally on Christmas morning. Marcus, Food Network wants to scrap the original Christmas special and do a documentary instead. The real story behind Delacroix's restaurant. Are you interested? I declined. Juliana would have wanted dignity, not drama. But the consequences for Isabel were immediate and devastating. Random House cancelled the cookbook deal on December 26. Their legal department cited misrepresentation of intellectual property ownership and failure to disclose recipe sources. $850,000 gone. The James Beard Foundation withdrew Isabel's nomination on December 28. Upon review of new information regarding recipe attribution, we cannot in good conscience maintain this nomination. Their statement was diplomatic but clear. Isabel's social media following built on her self-made chef brand collapsed overnight. Food bloggers and industry insiders shared Trevor's footage relentlessly. The hashtag #RecipeTheft trended for 3 days, but the professional consequences were nothing compared to the supplier response. Vincent Russo called me on December 29th. "Marcus, I'm getting calls from other restaurant owners. They want to know if their suppliers have proper documentation. You've started something big here." He was right. Food and Wine magazine ran a feature called "Who Really Owns That Recipe?", highlighting the importance of properly crediting culinary contributions. 3 other Boston restaurants quietly restructured their ownership agreements after lawyers reviewed their supplier contracts. Elena Rodriguez wrote a follow-up piece for Boston Magazine, "The Hidden Foundations of Restaurant Success." She interviewed 12 established chefs about family recipe attribution and business ownership transparency. The article won a James Beard Media Award 4 months later. Benjamin Cole proved invaluable during the transition. "Mr. Delacroix, I kept copies of everything," he told me on New Year's Day. "Every recipe Isabel claimed as hers, every supplier conversation where you were excluded, every staff meeting where she rewrote the restaurant's history." His documentation corroborated everything I'd revealed on camera. The staff reaction surprised me most. I'd expected loyalty conflicts, the difficult conversations about leadership changes. Instead, I found relief. Sophia, our pastry chef for 6 years, approached me during our first staff meeting in January. "Mr. Delacroix, we all knew. Isabel never let us talk about the early days, but we remembered when you taught her how to make the tiramisu. We remembered when you stayed up all night perfecting the risotto technique after Mrs. Juliana passed." Our head server, Rachel, nodded. "It was hard watching her take credit for everything you built, but we needed our jobs. We stayed quiet." The financial restructuring was surprisingly smooth. My attorney had prepared for this possibility years earlier. Business continuity plans, employee retention agreements, supplier transition documents, everything legally bulletproof. Isabel's final paycheck included earned wages through December 23rd, plus accrued vacation time, total $4,200. I added a severance payment of 12 months of salary to help with her transition. She didn't thank me, but she didn't fight the termination either. 3 weeks after the filming, Isabel opened a small catering business called Isabel's Table. No family recipes, no claims about traditional techniques, just honest contemporary cooking for private events. I heard through mutual industry contacts that she was struggling financially, but working hard to build something authentic. Good. That's how success should start. The reopening of Juliana's kitchen was scheduled for February 14th, Valentine's Day. Juliana would have loved the symbolism. I hired a new executive chef, Daniel Foster, a culinary school graduate with tremendous respect for traditional techniques. "Mr. Delacroix, I want to learn these family recipes properly," he told me during his interview. "Not to copy them, but to understand them, to honor where they came from." Perfect answer. The new menu would feature Juliana's original recipes with full attribution. Every dish would include a small card explaining its history, Juliana's development process, and the family significance. The ossobuco would be listed as Juliana's Christmas ossobuco 1943 to 1994. Traditional Milan braising technique refined over 12 years of family dinners. Recipe preserved and perfected by Marcus Delacroix. 2016 to 2024, Food Network eventually aired a shortened version of Trevor's footage as part of a series called Restaurant Revelations. The episode focused on business transparency and family dynamics in the restaurant industry. I received over 200 emails from viewers. Many were from adult children who'd taken their parents' contributions for granted. Some were from immigrants whose professional expertise had been dismissed by their own families. The most meaningful letter came from a chef in Portland whose mother had developed all his signature sauces. After watching the episode, he restructured his restaurant story to properly credit her contributions. "Your courage helped me find mine," he wrote. "Thank you for showing us that honesty isn't just good business. It's the foundation of real success." Juliana would have been proud. 6 months later, Juliana's kitchen had a 3-week waiting list for reservations. The food critics understood what we were building. Boston Globe wrote, "This isn't just a restaurant. It's a living museum of authentic family cooking where every recipe tells a true story." I'd established new boundaries everywhere. Business ownership was transparent and properly documented. Recipe attribution was complete and honest. Staff roles were clearly defined and fairly compensated. Most importantly, I'd hired a business manager, Laura Chen, to handle administrative duties. Marcus, you focus on the cooking and the recipes. She told me, I'll handle the contracts and the paperwork. That's what you're paying me for. Isabel and I spoke only once after the reopening. She called in March to ask if she could use one of Juliana's simpler recipes, the basic tomato sauce for a catering client. It's for a family anniversary party, she explained. 50 years married. They specifically requested traditional Italian-American food. I don't have anything that authentic. I thought about it for a long time. You can use the recipe, I finally said. But you need to tell them where it came from. Tell them about Juliana. Tell them about the 12 years she spent perfecting it. Tell them it's not your creation. I will, Isabel promised. I understand now. Credit matters. She kept that promise. I heard from the anniversary family later. They'd been so moved by Juliana's story that they booked a table at our restaurant for their own celebration. That's when I knew the boundaries were working. These days, I spend mornings in the kitchen teaching Daniel our family techniques. Afternoons reviewing supplier relationships and business operations. Evenings in my office carefully documenting everything for future generations. Because legacy isn't just about what you build. It's about how honestly you preserve it. The envelope that changed everything now sits in a frame on my office wall. Next to it, Juliana's wedding photo and her original recipe for Christmas ossobuco. Reminders that some things are worth protecting. Some stories demand to be told truthfully, and sometimes 40 years of silence ends with exactly the right signature. If you've been watching this story, I hope it reminds you to credit the hands that taught you, honor the recipes that feed your success, and respect the foundations that make your dreams possible. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and whether you've ever had to fight for proper recognition of your contributions because everyone deserves space at the table they helped build.